Chapter 125, The Domineering Second Highness 1. Among the three personal disciples of the Seven Peaks Peak Lower, if you were to talk about the disciple with a forthright personality, tactful, and had a wide range of friends, it would be the third disciple. However, if you were to talk about who among them had a fiery temper, and was feared by their fellow disciples, second senior sister would take the lead without a doubt. Not only did the disciples of the seventh peak feel this way, but the other peaks also felt the same. Most of them knew that the second highness of the seventh peak had an explosive temper and had an even more exaggerated strength. If there was the slightest disagreement, she would make a move. Moreover, the number of foundation-building cultivators from the various peaks she had beaten up over the years was too many. With her astonishing strength and a heaven-defying background, there was no reasoning with her. Her domineeringness was as famous as her reputation in the entire Seven Blood Eyes. Usually, even some elders would have a headache when they faced her, let alone ordinary disciples. This was especially so for her reputation. Not only did it spread in the sect, but it was also illustrious as countless pirates had died in her hands, and some small clans would tremble when they heard her name. At this moment, she stood there with a terrifying aura that suppressed the surroundings, causing everyone to feel immense pressure. Xu Qing was the same. An intense sense of danger rose in his heart, as though he was facing a peerless ferocious beast in the Forbidden Zone's jungle. The feeling was even stronger than when he saw Deacon Li. The old ancestor of the Diamond sect was much weaker in comparison. Xu Qing's vigilance reached its peak. He instinctively took a few steps back, and his breathing grew hurried. The vicious intent coming from second senior sister was too intense and terrifying. In fact, from the gap beside him, he could see that the streets outside were empty. It was as though no one was willing to appear in the vicinity at this moment. Only the little fatty, Huan Yan, didn't feel any pressure. He even looked excited as though his scheme had succeeded. He arrived beside second senior sister and spoke with an aggrieved expression. "Senior sister, it's the shopkeeper of this shop and that stinky fish. They said that the things I gave you were stolen from the Diamond sect. Senior sister, I, Huan Yan, am an upright and honest person. Am incomparably sincere, honest, loyal, gentle, and considerate. I only love you, senior sister. It's fine if they slander me, but they can't slander the gifts I gave you. Slandering my gifts to senior sister, this is slandering my 8 years of feelings for senior sister." The little fatty stood beside second senior sister, looking a little out of place. Regardless of height or thickness, he was like a child standing beside an adult. Fortunately, his stomach was very big. To a certain extent, they didn't seem completely incompatible. However, his words caused everyone in the shop to be stunned for a moment. They all took a deep breath and their expressions were filled with incomparable shock. These disciples of the various peaks who had been watching the commotion earlier now widened their eyes in disbelief. There were even some who found it unbelievable. Zhang San was the same. As for the shopkeeper, his expression was completely dull as he muttered, "Second Highness is your senior sister." These words were said awkwardly, but it revealed the inner world of the shopkeeper, where countless emotions were surging. Everyone here knew of Huan Yan. After all, he was considered quite famous in the seventh peak. However, most of his fame came from his infatuation. Everyone had more or less discussed Huan Yan in private. They knew that he had pursued a certain senior sister for 8 years, and the gifts he gave her could buy several shops. When they talked about this in the past, most of them could guess that this Huan Yan wasn't ordinary. That was why he was able to keep his wealth and not die until now. However, most of their discussions about him contained a hint of mockery. They thought, how could a man bend his back and curry favor with a woman to such a degree? However, at this moment, regardless of whether it was Zhang San, the shopkeeper, or the other disciples here, all of them looked at the little fatty with unprecedented admiration in their gazes amidst their astonishment. Some even revealed intense envy in their eyes. Clearly, if the senior sister was such a person, then they wanted to give her gifts too. Let alone 8 years, they could continue giving gifts for even 18 or 28 years. Xu Qing's heart also pounded wildly. He looked at the little fatty and then at the second highness. His gaze was a little dazed. He really didn't expect that the person the little fatty had been pursuing for 8 years was actually the second highness of the seventh peak. And now, he also had an answer to the reason why the little fatty had forcibly taken the blame for this matter. The fatty had intentionally blown things up to attract his senior sister over to relieve the pain of lovesickness. Xu Qing looked at the incomparably complacent little fatty and then, at the domineering and terrifying second highness, he fell silent. In the face of Huan Yan's grievance, the second highness raised her brow slightly and walked forward. When she passed by the merfolk youth who had his head lowered, she didn't say anything, but her eyes clearly revealed some disdain. Huan Yan, who was at the side, also showed disdain. He lifted his chin and snorted. The gaze from the second highness greatly stimulated the merfolk youth. His body trembled as though he was trying his best to control it. However, the paleness on his face still revealed the terror in his heart. His mind instinctively recalled the massacre on Merfolk Island 30 years ago. That figure that was filled with bloodlust during that massacre. That was a competition of the seventh peak of the seven blood eyes. Due to the evilness of the human race and the unyielding nature of the great merfolk race, the seventh peak's competition was arranged in the merfolk race's territory. At the same time, this was also a suppression. It was also after that incident that the two sides became allies once again. Although Seven Blood Eyes was the one who managed to resolve the crisis of the merfolk's extermination in time, and provided them with many resources, in the eyes of all the merfolk, this was what they should do. They felt that becoming allies with the human race was a humiliation in itself. Countless emotions surged in his heart, but he still lowered his head deeply and didn't dare to lift it up. He only roared inwardly. He swore that the merfolk race would make the Seven Blood Eyes pay the price sooner or later. Seeing that the other party kept on bowing, the disdain in the second highness' eyes deepened. She walked up to Xu Qing and stared at him coldly. Xu Qing took a deep breath. His expression was solemn as he cupped his fists and bowed. "Greetings, second highness. Senior sister, this is Xu Qing, my brother. He was also implicated by me this time around." Huan Yan put away the items he had taken out earlier. When he introduced them, there was a hint of pride in his expression. The second highness nodded and ignored Xu Qing. She then walked toward the counter. When she got there, she swung the large sword in her hand. The shopkeeper trembled as the sword landed heavily on the counter. This large black sword was too heavy. Even though the wooden counter was quite sturdy, it still caved in with a cracking sound when the large sword landed. This caused the tip of the sword to directly press against the shopkeeper's stomach. The cold chill it emitted caused sweat to stream down the shopkeeper's forehead. His face was extremely pale as he spoke in a trembling voice. "Second Highness, are you saying that my items are stolen goods?" The second highness calmly asked. More sweat covered the shopkeeper's body, and his back was drenched. His face was filled with bitterness, and he wailed in his heart. He originally wanted to make a fortune from today's matter, but the little fatty appeared out of nowhere. Never in his wildest dreams did he imagine that the little fatty had such a great god backing him. He couldn't afford to offend this person in front of him. In fact, he felt that even the deacon who arranged for him to do this wouldn't be willing to easily offend this second highness, who was like a living dinosaur. After all, this was the Seventh Peak's eldest princess, who was doted on by Old Master Seventh. He stammered and hurriedly spoke. "Am I misunderstanding? This is a misunderstanding. I saw it wrongly. How could they be stolen goods?" When Xu Qing saw this scene, a deep glint appeared in his eyes. He understood strength was the eternal and unchanging principle of this world. This was especially so after he heard the second highness following words, which allowed him to understand what was called domineering. "You didn't see wrongly. These are indeed stolen goods. I was the one who robbed the diamond sect. Do you have any objections?" Second senior sister coldly spoke. The sword in her hand pushed forward and instantly pierced the shopkeeper's clothes, touching his stomach. The shopkeeper's body trembled, and more sweat seeped out of his forehead. He could only continue to agree and didn't know how to respond. "Tell the person behind you that I was the one who robbed the diamond sect. Also, tell the diamond sect to come and apologize to me in 3 days. They have to give me a gift that satisfies me." There was clearly no threat in second senior sister's words. But after everyone heard it, they deeply understood that if the diamond sect didn't come to apologize, or if the value of the gift wasn't enough, then the diamond sect would cease to exist in this world. This sentence fully displayed the second highness domineeringness. She then swept her gaze across the items scattered on the ground. "Are you going to take these?" "I'll take them," the shopkeeper spoke up immediately. He didn't dare to breathe loudly, so he hurriedly took out 100 spirit stones. But when he saw that second senior sister's brows were raised, he trembled and took out another 100 spirit stones while gritting his teeth. He placed the 200 spirit stones at the side and squeezed out a smile at Huang Yan and Xu Qing, his gaze filled with pleading. Second senior sister did not continue to frighten the shopkeeper. She picked up the large sword that was smashed on the counter and walked out. When she passed by the merfolk youth, she spoke with disgust. "Scram, you're in my way, stinky fish." The merfolk youth's body trembled even more, but in the end, he still silently took a few steps back. "Goodbye, Second Highness." As the Second Highness walked to the entrance, everyone in the shop cupped their fists and spoke with great respect. Xu Qing lifted his head and stared deeply at second senior sister's back. He then cupped his fists as well. Right now, Huang Yan's expression was filled with pride. He swept his gaze across the silent crowd and patted Xu Qing's shoulder. "See? This is my senior sister, my goddess. Let's see who dares to slander us in the future. However, you're really something, kid. You didn't hesitate to help me because of my matter, and you even wanted to help me shoulder the burden. I'll remember this matter. Let me tell you, I'm someone who repays kindness with kindness. Right now, I don't have anything good on me. When I see something good later, I'll give it to you as a gift." Huang Yan's expression was extremely smug. After he finished speaking, he waved his hand at Xu Qing. Without waiting for Xu Qing to speak, he ran out in a hurry and chased after the Second Highness. "Senior sister, wait for me." Xu Qing's expression was still in a daze. After a while, he retracted his gaze from the door and casually glanced at the corner of his shirt. He then glanced at the gloomy-looking merfolk youth. A hint of eerie intent flashed in his eyes, but it quickly returned to normal. He took the 200 spirit stones that the shopkeeper had given. Under the other party's bitter and fearful gaze, he walked out of the shop and didn't even glance at the merfolk youth. When he walked out of the shop, Xu Qing tidied his clothes and swept his gaze across the corner of his shirt. His gaze then turned gloomy. At the same time, the merfolk youth in the shop looked at Xu Qing's departing back with an ugly expression. His mood today was extremely bad, and there was a hint of disgust in his eyes. "Those who fought with me, even if they managed to escape, very few would be able to survive. It's a pity that I can't see the scene of their deaths." Snorting coldly in his heart, the youth retracted his gaze. He flicked his sleeves and walked out of the shop. To him, Xu Qing was just an ant. If it wasn't for Huang Yan, he would have definitely killed Xu Qing today. Everyone from the 7 Blood Eyes deserves death. This kid stole my credit, so he deserves death even more. He'll die sooner or later.